My name's Tim Murphy. Thank you one and all for your time. It's nice to meet you before the event. What I hope to do is give you a little history about Yubico, a couple of demos, where we've come from, certainly talk about the main reason we're here, which is our 5CI, so our iOS release of a key, and then we'll kick into some Q&As. Organisation was founded in 2007. We now have about 230 people with 7 offices globally. We have a sizable presence here in Australia in relative terms with 5 people. So myself, my systems engineer and 3 development people based in Melbourne. Investors include NEA, Bua, A16Z. We've got thousands of enterprise customers. From the history of Yubico, we've manufactured around 7.5 million keys in total, and we're now at the stage of producing about 3 million keys a year. So our ramp up in the enterprise is quite significant. And some of the larger enterprise customers we have include some of the global top IT companies, so 9 out of 10. And by that I mean people like AWS, Google, Microsoft are all users of our technology in one fashion or another. And I can talk about that if you want to. And we've been profitable for the last 6 years of the organisation. Founded by a husband and wife team based in Sweden some 12 years ago, and it was Stina, who is now our CEO, who just hated the one-time screen-based token that she was given from her bank, and she figured it was insecure. Her husband is a cryptographic expert, and he was able to show her how it was easily broken, and literally that is the history of how Yubico was born, where she said this is just not good enough. So our very first key was a one-time password presence-based key to where we are today. This is a very good graphic, gives you an idea, and the point behind it is all of these technologies in the digital space present a token that lives on our key. And at least half of those brands that you see up there are also enterprise users of our technology as well. So not only do they present a protocol that exists on our key for their user base, their internal enterprise users are also users of our key. I'm happy to share this slide with you, by the way, rather than, I notice you're all taking photos, but quite happy to share this slide. So the Yubico platform, what is it? Well, certainly there's a lot of services involved to get our key sometimes, depending on the protocol that you're using. From an integration perspective, we provide a wealth of libraries that are free for our user base. We certainly have a lot of open source technologies available as well. And in addition to that, there are an enormous amount, previous slide being the point, of third-party integrators that our key can be integrated with that technology. Protocols, we have 6 protocols on the key today. That's all of our keys that are in your pack have the 6 protocols. From UBATP, TOTP, HOTP, PIV or smart card as it's known, FIDO-U2F, FIDO-2, and OpenPGP. So the list is long and distinguished. So pretty much any of the protocols from an authentication perspective live on our key today. And then we have most form factors available to us, from a USB-A, USB-C, NFC from a wireless perspective, and also the most recently released Lightning key, which is also in your pack. We have a HSM, which we're not here to talk about today, but a hardware security module, and we are looking at embedding some of our technology as time goes by. Secure production. We manage and own our own production facilities in San Jose and in Sweden, in Stockholm. Most of the keys that find their way down into Asia, including Australia, come from our Stockholm manufacturing plant, and the US pretty much manages the provisioning for most of the US and Canadian market. Our keys are water resistant, they're extremely robust. They are built to hang off a key ring for the most part. The ones that are in your pack this morning, I've had mine on my key ring for 2 odd years. You wouldn't even know that the key has been floating around with all my other house keys and car keys. And in fact, some of my colleagues from Microsoft, they had some of our original keys, which I have here, and I'm welcome to share to show you those later on at the end of the event. One of them is a 10-year-old key, and whilst it's not perfect, it's very grubby from being in his pocket. I swapped with him because I wanted that key. And it's extremely robust. We haven't really changed our manufacturing process. Compliance perspective, FIPS, not entirely relevant for Australia, but we do have some FIPS clients here in Australia. so DFARS, GDPR, PIV, naturally, W3C, and probably our flagship protocol is FIDO, so FIDO U2F and FIDO 2, which I will talk about more. An enormous amount of accreditation, and I think you'll see the bottom right-hand corner, Steen is very proud of that photo meeting Barack Obama. So the reason we're here is to talk about our more recently released key, our 5CI. It has all the protocols I've talked about, but is designed for the Apple ecosystem with iOS. So it has Lightning on one side, has USB-C on the other, very much designed obviously for iPhone and for iPad. And of course the little gold piece, which you can see on the bottom of the key, is the touch part, the presence part, which I'll show you during the demonstration how that works. We're very early to market. By that I mean we're preparing the Apple ecosystem for this whole authentication space. There's still levels of technology that's yet to catch up, and I will talk about that. And certainly it's not entirely supported with the likes of Safari yet, but those different scenarios are coming where it will be a great solution for the wider enterprise who are in the iPhone space. So what are we trying to do? And this was from a recent survey when we went to the most recent Black Hat in North America. 81% of data breaches are due to stolen credentials. You can slice and dice those numbers any way you like, but I think most will come up with the 80% plus. The numbers are always interesting. 600 billion yearly costs for IT fraud. It could be more, it could be less. At the end of the day, it's a significant number. And then what is more interesting about all of that, if 80% of our predominant loss is coming from breach of authentication or credentials, why is it only 10% of our IT spend is directed towards solving that problem? We try and make it easy. Quick history about authentication, the challenge. Back in the 60s, it was a username password. Fantastic. Thank you IBM for inventing that. Made life really easy, but of course very easy to break, the memorised secret. Along came the likes of RSA tokens and the likes. Interesting concept. They were fairly quickly broken. It's a broken protocol. Not RSA itself, but the OTP is very vulnerable to man-in-the-middle attacks and is not conducive to the way humans work from a workflow perspective. Potentially, and for the most part, that style of token is one token fits one service. So if you need to have more than one service, you need to have more than one token. Very annoying, very frustrating. Along came PIV in around 2007, 2008. Many of us will know of that as smart card. And you'll see in your branch, tellers you swiping their smart card through their keyboard. That's the PIV protocol. It was probably the first of a quality level of strong security, but very difficult to use because there is no real standard for hardware around smart card readers. You don't see too many smart card readers in the likes of laptops and PCs. And then you need to issue cards, which is difficult just by nature, and cards are also often lost. Along came the Yubikey. By the way, Yubikeys are a smart card reader and a smart card, as well as everything else that they do. So they can present as a keyboard. Okay, so this is a quick graphic. I'm going to give you a demo of this momentarily. But the whole point behind us is you're challenged. Enter your username password. You will then enter your key and touch your key. That is the process. Now I'm going to give you a quick demo of how that works. Bear with me while I just get out of this. Yubico as an organisation, we use we don't use technology that stays connected, which is typical. Bear with me while I reconnect my iPhone, please.
Sometimes you gotta get out of the Wi-Fi and click the Wi-Fi again for it to appear.
No, I'm out of the Wi-Fi here.
No, but I mean you gotta click outside of that and then click back into that. See? That's what I mean.
Right, let's try that again. So I'm going to enter my username. This is FIDO U2F. Enter my password as normal. No, I won't show you what that is. It's going to challenge me for my USB key. This is my key. I have a small key, which is not in your pack, but it's designed to permanently stay in my laptop. And I will enter that into my USB port, and you'll notice it says touch my key. Is it easy enough to see? My little token has got a yellow light popping up. I now touch that token. And I'm in, which is terrific. And it really is as simple as that from a user experience perspective. It won't happen every time you log in. I have gone in via incognito, which forces me to authenticate on every occasion. If I go in as a normal user, I won't be challenged for the key. Depends what my administrator says. I'm challenged once a month to prove the use or the existence of my key. What's the touch point? The touch proves I'm human. The touch proves I'm here. It's not biometric, but basically, and in concept, I can't build a piece of malware to reach out of my keyboard and touch the key. So username, password, and then enter the key, and the touch piece just basically opens up that cryptographic exchange. So, let's now go back to the presentation. Any questions on that?
Yes. Can you, with hardware authentication, is hardware authentication your only option? So if I had 2FA set up on my Gmail to use a Yubikey, will I always need that Yubikey even if a device doesn't support it? Like,
No, you don't have to. Okay. No, not at all. So it's all about a secure element, and it happens to be that the Yubikey is a secure element. And inside most FIDO protocols, whether it be FIDO U2F or FIDO2, you can register more than one secure element.
Yep.
One of them may be the fingerprint reader in your laptop.
So in this situation, you've only got one secure element registered.
If you only have one?
Oh, so no, in this situation, you only had one registered?
You might have an authenticator. You need some other method. If you're not going to be guaranteed to have your key, you need to think about your workflow. And your workflow might say, well, I need strong authentication. I may not, for whatever reason, always have my key. I can configure an authenticator. It's not ideal, but it is an option that you can do, and the protocol certainly support it.
Google often lets you do an SMS code as a fallback as well.
That's another format, or you can actually write down, print some codes if you really want to. We as an organisation don't allow that, so all the backup codes are we have to call IT and get the codes from IT to make it work. So we either have a key or we don't. And as it stands, I have the key that sits on my laptop, and these keys are registered as well. So I've got a couple of Yubikeys here. So I will always have backup in one fashion or another. Doesn't always work, but for the most part it does. Yeah.
Just one general question. With the large number of authentication methods around on phones, you know, all the different biometrics, the two-factor authentication, getting codes through an SMS.
Yep.
What's your pitch about needing to have this as well?
So, yeah, very, very good question. One of the challenges you have with the likes of an electronic device, as in a phone, its basic nature is vulnerable, number one. It's also very difficult to bootstrap. You can't easily register more than one software authenticator, as in if you lose your phone, you're pretty well locked out for the most part. The key is extremely portable. I can go from device to device to device. And also the workflow, as I showed in that previous demonstration, and I will give you a better demonstration again of a passwordless environment in a moment. It just suits the way humans work. That's the fundamental answer. However, in some instances it doesn't always fit, and an organisation may just want the software authenticator, and that's fine too. Protocols support it, and you can have a mix of an authenticator and a key, or both, or neither. Yes.
Can I actually add something to that as well? So James Turner, I'm from Slicer Lens. So I run a group of security executives from large Australian organisations. And one of the challenges is when you've got people like big banks that they want to be able to send secure SMSs to the customers for stronger authentication. But then you've also got the telcos, and the telcos are obliged by legislation to let their customers choose between the telcos really quickly. So what would be great for the banks is if the telcos would never let anyone port their mobile numbers. But of course, the telcos aren't allowed to prevent that. They've got to make it as easy as possible. So the entire
So you're worried. So the concern would be that someone else gets the number.
And porting mobile numbers is a huge vector of attack against Australians.
I've had it happen to friends of mine.
Yeah. So it's a major issue in Australia. So everyone thinks that sending SMSs and so on is secure, and it's great compared to many alternatives. But in Australia, there's a fundamental vulnerability there, and that's due to the legislation of making it easy for customers to change. Sorry.
Thank you. No,
Yeah,
it's a very
that's
good
all
answer,
right.
and you're right. Certainly, hijacking one's SIM is quite a common hack, and then they have access.
Happened to Jack Dorsey of Twitter.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
very true. Which is why he supports FIDO U2F. One of the very good reasons. So, let me introduce our most recent key, the main reason why we are here. You all have one of these in your pack. If you don't, please see Louise on the way out. This is the most recent edition of our key. It was released officially in market about 2 weeks ago, and is still not shipping, so it gives you an idea. You're getting an early run. The first run of production keys hits the market in around the first week of October, so it's almost imminent. The concept behind this is the Apple ecosystem has been one of the least serviced from an enterprise authentication perspective for many years. Yubico is working aggressively towards trying to change that. The key, the 5CI, has Lightning one side, and we license that Lightning chip directly from Apple, so this is a certified Apple device. And the other side is a USB-C, which can be used, by the way, in any USB-C aware device as a normal authentication token. And of course, from an Apple ecosystem perspective, it fits the iPhone and it fits the iPad, which doesn't have, or the newer iPads have USB-C.
But I could use it with a USB-C equipped Android phone if I wanted.
Correct. Yes, you can. It has all the same protocols, all the same capability of all of our keys, and will work on non-Apple devices that have a USB-C port. So I've already done the demo for Google for you. Let me show you the form factors that we have, and I have mentioned it, but USB-A, which is our flagship product, it's our most commonly deployed technology, mostly because there's more USB-A ports than there is anything else out in the market. It is also today our only key that supports NFC. We also have a USB-A Nano. It's designed to stay in your device on a permanent basis. And you've seen my USB-C Nano, just the same, but a different form factor. And then we have the keyring version of our Yubikey 5 series, so the 5C, and the most recently released 5CI. Yes, it is white, which is my one. The ones you have is black. And the reason why we decided as a corporate you can have any colour you like so long as it's black. So going back to one of the points behind our keys has always been one key becomes your root of trust from an authentication perspective, regardless of form factor. And going back to what I commented with the old one-time password tokens, our key can have authentication credentials for more than one service. So as opposed to one-time password, older style tokens where it was one key, one service, we're now in the realm of one key, multiple services. So my keys that I personally use are registered for obviously corporate, private G Suite, Facebook, the same key. I use it for Xero because that happens to be our expense system. And I also use it for many other private, but it is one key that does all. And I implore you, all of you, to use the keys that you were given and at least secure your own digital footprint. They're fully functioning keys, and you can register them against as many services as you like. So, what does our key do? Let me show you. What's so good about it today? All this is going to do is mirror my phone. And we have a really interesting, this is just a demo application that we've used just to make life easy. I'm going to log in as a normal user. This could be any banking app. Banking ABC happens to be Acme. I'm going to use the secure element on the phone to get me in to the application, and I'm going to make just a basic transfer of a basic amount of money. Let's send John some money, or no, we'll send Susan the money. We'll send Susan $555. We'll transfer that. It asks me to touch my phone, so it's using the standard secure element built into the device once it accepts my connection, which is great. And that's happened. So John's a happy little camper. I'm going to pay somebody else a privileged amount, and that's where we'll see how this changes the game. Anything over $1,000 in this instance is how this application is built. It now asks me to insert my Yubikey, which is easy enough. It will now ask me to touch my key, and it's difficult to see, but you can see the green flash on the two gold buttons on the side of the Yubikey. I now touch those. I have now authenticated. It will now make that transfer of $555. That's step-up authentication, passwordless. That is a FIDO2 experience. That's pretty much what the key is all about. Very much built around this. Very much designed to start to introduce the concept of strong authentication for iPhone. Now, let me give you one other demo, just how the key works. I'm going to log into Twitter, which is fine.
Does it work with the Twitter app as well?
Yes, I'm just doing Twitter now.
Oh no, but I mean like the actual Twitter native app as opposed to in the browser.
Yes, it does. Ask me once again for the key. That's terrific. I now need to touch the key, and I've logged in successfully to Twitter. And I always worry about that because you never know what might show up. But thankfully, I have a fairly civilised Twitter account, only because I don't let the kids get to it. That's a very brief demonstration of what capability we have and where we are going. I just need to kill this, sorry. That's our key, designed to sit on a key ring. I use my Yubikeys religiously for many different things. The primary one certainly sits on my laptop permanently. I often get asked about what happens if I lose a key. Yes, I agree, you may need a second key. Most of us will have a second car key. Most of us will have a second house key. And if you look at my key ring, it's not really the Yubikey that's a problem. You know, that's an $800 replacement for my car, and my house key is just a pain in the backside. I'm going to have to go home, go get the key, get it cut, carry on. It's really quite difficult. The Yubikey, having two of them, is our recommendation as an organisation, and most that have privileging networks will run with more than one key. It's a marvellous little device. The commencement of strong authentication in iOS.
Are they replaceable?
Yes, they are very replaceable. So, in fact, in most iterations of the PIV, FIDO and FIDO2, you can register more than one key at any time. So G Suite, Facebook, you can register more than one key. In the likes of G Suite, I've got about 15 registered, only because of the different demos that I do. And you can add, move, change, do what you wish. As a corporation, if they're managing enterprises in the likes of Microsoft or in the likes of Google, they can add, move, change keys on behalf of the enterprise. So they have enterprise versions.
Sorry to ask you such a basic question, but do you need to, do all these applications have a separate means by which you can tell them you're using a Yubico key, or is there, how do you set that up?
Yeah, it depends on protocol, and that is a very good question. The fact that our key has 6 protocols, some of the older protocols are very basic in their form and function. They don't give us that easy level of visibility. So if I'm in the world of OTP, I really have no idea. And nor can the key give you any additional idea what's happening in the back end. In the likes of PIV and above, yes, I can see who's using a key and who's not, how they're coming in, where the credentials sit, and which credentials they've actually used. So one of the concepts, and I don't want to go too deep and add marvellous 4-letter acronyms, but we're a co-inventor of CTAP, which forms the FIDO2 Alliance, or part of the FIDO2 Alliance. CTAP stands for Client to Authenticator Protocol. It's the piece that enables me to add the different secure elements, whether it be a YubiKey, a fingerprint reader, iris scanner, or, body temperature, online DNA, whatever the case may be. That's the whole concept of CTAP. And it gives me the ability to add a multitude of different secure elements. So the YubiKey is just one of many secure elements.
Yeah. So in the case of Twitter, just to make it simple, if I wanted to use the YubiKey with Twitter, what do I do to set it up?
Okay, let me show you. Twitter's not the best example.
Or something?
Let me show you Google. Google's the better example of all of them.
But surely it's the same for all of them. You go into your settings, you go to where you got passwords, and you say set up a second factor
I wish
authentication.
it was.
It's a similar
Unfortunately,
process in other ways.
yeah, the concept, the FIDO protocols, or the PIV, FIDO U2F and FIDO 2, we conform to the protocol, but there's no protocol standard for the administration function of the protocol itself. So certainly the cryptographic exchange, and I'll show you the two differences if you like.
Sure. But I mean, for Chris, you can do it with Twitter. It's just fiddlier to set up. But then once it's set up, it's working every time.
Correct. But here's the difference. In the likes of G Suite, I can set up as many keys as I like. In a FIDO U2F, FIDO 2, I can't do that with Twitter. I can only set up one key because that's their choice and the way in which they choose
And
to
is that
present the
before or after the Jack Dorsey hack?
that was before. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, it's
now.
before and they haven't changed it yet.
Jack wasn't about this anyway.
Sorry, I'm struggling to maintain internet connection.
For your demo.
One of us can run an insecure hotspot for you if you like.
For your demo,
I'm going to hook up over here.
you always... iPhones like to do power management, so they disconnect you if you're not using the network.
So when are we expecting to see broader support in iOS?
Yeah. I knew that question had come up. So, unless the operating system, either the browser or the kernel, supports an authentication method, then naturally you can't necessarily get that browser support. Only Brave today supports the FIDO protocols in an iOS realm. The kernel does not yet. It's an Apple issue. They will follow through as time goes by, and they will catch up like everybody else. If we talk any other platform, Windows, even macOS, and OS X, they support the protocols in browser and at kernel. Android, native, yeah.
You better touch your little key.
So, well, the touch is the universal second factor piece. Yeah, sorry.
It's very touching security.
So is it, with the new Safari 13, is that working?
Or iOS 13.
No, there's Safari 13 for
Safari
the
13,
Mac
okay.
browser.
It was supported in 12.
Yeah, it's
Only in OS X and macOS, not on iOS.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Safari 13 on Mac is just sort of
There was-
dropped a lot of plugins.
Yeah, there were rumours that it was going to be supported with iOS 13 on iPhone, but it didn't make it this version. But
There
it
is
will come.
there is 13.1 coming tomorrow.
Fingers crossed.
Sure.
So yeah, sorry. For the most part, you will go into your configuration of your own account. For the most part, you'll go into a security or authentication setting, and then for the most part, you'll set up two-step verification or two-factor authentication. It's going to ask me for my credentials again, because I'm going to be changing the way. And you'll notice here's all the keys I've got registered in a FIDO U2F and FIDO 2 perspective.
Okay, so you look for add for security key or something
Correct.
like that in any application.
Or two-factor authentication, some form of security. In Twitter, it's much the same. You just don't get the same option.
Yeah,
Yeah, add a security key.
gotcha.
Very
And when you
straightforward.
touch it, is that doing any fingerprint authentication, or is it just seeing that you're a human responding to?
It's purely measuring human resistance. So you could touch your left earlobe if you could reach it, your elbow, your nose, so long as it would have the opportunity to measure your electrical resistance. And that's the universal second factor piece. That's the piece that proves you're human.
Make sure you're not
It's
a
not a
robot.
remote computer that's logging in via a piece of malware. Yeah.
Just to go back to the iOS demos, so you mentioned that it's not really supported at the operating system level. So does that mean that the applications that use it have an SDK from
Correct.
Yubico that they're integrating?
Today we provide a free SDK for all of our customers. Many of the third-party vendors have already availed themselves of it. LastPass, BitHub, Okta, obviously Brave as a browser, they have all released support for the Yubikey. But eventually that'll be solved anyway because it'll be supported natively in iOS. That will come in time.
Do you have any idea when Apple's planning to do that?
I wish. And if I did, I certainly wouldn't say it on camera anyway.
but it's in their interest, in theory, to do it sooner rather than later. And
Yeah. Look, they're like, I would imagine they're like most vendors in that space. They're also reluctant to rush it because it is a very new concept for them. Apple have only just released support for full bidirectional NFC capability. The hardware's always been capable. They've only just opened that up in iOS 13. So it's coming. They obviously make sure they get it right.
In a situation with LastPass, which you just mentioned, do you use it like as part of the LastPass doing the authentication? And if you do that, do you need to also add a security key in the app? Or is it
Yes, you do. In something like a LastPass, and there's quite a few of those secure password stores that support a YubiKey, and they openly talk about, this is how you set up a YubiKey. And the concept behind it is they won't present the long stored secret without the presence of the key.
So it effectively handles the second factor authentication in LastPass before giving you the password for the site.
Correct.
So in that case, you wouldn't have to set it up in the site itself. You just depend on LastPass.
But it's still a stored secret. It's still not ideal. It's never ideal to have a store, or just a username password. And the concept behind FIDO2 is we are eliminating that whole store of a username password database. And the argument behind it is, well, if the perpetrators don't have a target, hopefully they're going to move on. And the YubiKey itself becomes my root of trust, and it stores my private key versus the public key.
So are you no longer concerned about your password so much?
I'm still concerned about them because I'm always concerned about where my password is transmitted to and what are they doing with it. Now, if I'm in a situation where I'm using FIDO2 and there is no username password exchange, well, they're not storing anything. We're just having a cryptographic exchange between private public key. Nothing's stored, and it's effectively a yes or a no. You can continue or you can't continue. So it's a good thing. So my YubiKey becomes my root of trust for everything that I do. Now, that's a euphoric world. There will always be one-time password. There will always be one-time password. And we try and add a level of value with that as well. So, for instance, we do have a software authenticator as well. And I have that. You'll notice it's set up for Facebook, for Twitter, and for Xero. If I take my YubiKey out, you'll note the one-time passwords no longer exist. So we try and add levels of security to it. So we won't give you access to your one-time password without the presence of the key. It's still not ideal. It's still one-time password. But it's a slightly better approach. And it's available on Android and soon to be available on, funnily enough, on iPhone. Funnily enough.
So
Yes.
I'm just wondering, who are your sort of customers so far in Australia with this new one, or just with your key? Like, do you have government customers?
We do actually. We have some early adopters who got involved in our development program. Two in particular, I can probably not talk about any of them. But one is government, one's in transport. And they're looking very much at using our software development kit to release their own proprietary application so people can use the 5CI key.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said one's in government, one's in transport. Transport is government, isn't it? Or you mean a transport?
Not if they're an airline.
Oh, okay, cool. So
Or
government-
a Lynn Fox.
I wonder which one.
But is it federal or state?
Federal government,
Okay,
Canberra.
cool.
Yep.
Alright.
How do you get consumers to care about this?
I'm sorry, Hal?
How do you get consumers? This makes sense, an enterprise perspective, business. But what about end users? How do you get?
Yeah, funnily enough, consumers were the backdrop for Yubico for the last 10 years.
Mhm.
It's interesting, when I was interviewing with the company 2 years ago, I was at an event in Canberra, and I asked the Canberra colleagues that I knew, what have you heard of Yubikey? And seriously, without a word of a lie, of the 30 I asked, 29 pulled a Yubikey out of their pocket. And they hadn't been issued those keys by corporate. They'd personally purchased those keys. We have a portal. We ship keys globally. It represents 20% of the keys that we now ship globally. So the other 80% are via our normal enterprise channels, and 20% ship out of our portal still. And we don't see that changing. Individuals do take responsibility often for their own authentication. And the industry, the internet, the interweb is making it easier. This is not my coined phrase, but I really like it. Authentication is becoming the new perimeter. There's no doubt about it.
And if I've got one computer and I've got my Gmail protected on that, and I go to another computer, a friend's computer, and log in, is it just going to ask me for my key and I can plug it in and
Yes.
that's it? So I don't have to set anything up
No.
on a brand new computer?
No, you do not. No, you'll lose the ability for, say, that 30-day grace period where you won't be asked for your key on a known machine. As soon as you go to an unknown machine, it will ask you for key regardless.
Sure. Good.
Question, sorry, so there's 2 enterprise clients here in Australia. You're saying there's 2 enterprise clients that are using it internally?
There's 2 enterprise clients who are developing
Okay.
via our SDK.
Okay.
So yes, they are using it, and they've taken possession of quite a few of the early adopters' keys.
Do you have any idea how many customers or users you have in Australia that are currently using Yubikeys?
Yeah, in the life of Yubico as a company, we've shipped about 800,000 keys into country.
Into
In total.
Australia?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that means a lot more than 2 enterprise customers. I mean, you're talking
No,
about...
no, 2 enterprise, sorry, in the
for
5 CI only.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
thought, yeah.
So 2 enterprise in this new 5 CI.
Okay.
We probably have about 100,000 enterprise individuals using the keys. The other 700 odd thousand have all been over the years as effectively individuals who have imported their own key.
So that's about 100,000 staff of different organisations that have been issued it
Yep.
by that company.
And they are of varying ilk. Higher ed is one of our biggest users. They love the keys, particularly from a privileged access to the environment. To federal government love us as well because of the PIV capability or smart card capability. So we make it very easy for Active Directory users today to get involved in a passwordless experience in preparation for their Azure AD roadmap, which is still very much in its early stages. The password experience is effectively in beta or preview release, as it's affectionately called. But Azure AD today is making it easy for Active Directory users to take part in a passwordless experience. So it's very easy, and our key represents or presents itself as a smart card.
Supposing if you're an ordinary consumer, you've got your bank accounts and your online trading or all that secured with Yubikey, and you are a bit negligent, unfortunately, you go overseas and you forget your Yubikey, are you stuffed?
Are you locked out? Yeah.
Are you locked
Well,
out? I'm sorry.
I
Yes.
I understand the language. I can answer it a different way. If you're overseas and you lost your credit card, you're in a bit of strife as well. And the concept is much the same, the workflow. How do I present myself as the appropriate human back to the challenging environment, being the bank with the credit card or being my enterprise with my Yubikey? And enterprise and most third-party technology, whether it be Microsoft or Okta or Ping or any of those larger enterprise identity and access management systems, will offer that workflow function. We don't with the key. That's not what we do. We're the human interface to all of those other enterprise identity and access management systems. But they all offer some form, if not a secondary form of authentication, being an authenticator or SMS or whatever, or like we don't allow those presentations at all. I have to get on the phone and ring our help desk, and we have a 24-hour help desk, so that's fine.
Because if you did allow SMS or some other form of authentication, well, that could be a weakness.
It could be very much a weakness.
So-
But you could ring at least, yeah, absolutely. So at least you could ring in to you
Yeah,
and try and hide.
So do you ring Yubico or do you ring Google, or who do you ring if you lose your Yubico?
Depends on who
Yubikey?
you're trying to get into, not us.
Yeah.
The other thing about the Yubico is, no matter where you've registered it, we don't store any data on here. So if you find it on the street, there is no identifying marks on the Yubico unless you're foolish enough to write down, this belongs to Joe Blow, here's my username and password. Well, I can't prevent that, unfortunately. But the key provides no data as to where it's being registered.
But if you're overseas and you lose it, and you didn't bring your second one that you stored somewhere, then, I mean, you know, let's say you're in the US or you're in Taiwan or Hong Kong, somewhere, right? I mean, can you go somewhere and buy another key and then
Yes, you could.
register it?
Yes.
And
You'd have to register it for the services again.
Yeah, you do. You have to re-register the key. And this is where that individual would need to go back to the manager of that enterprise. How do I get in from a secondary perspective? You know, what are the additional steps or methods to get in?
But
And
with Twitter or with Google, I mean, can you set it up so that you can only get in via the YubiKey? Can you
that's
turn
what-
off all those other
as
things?
an enterprise, that's what you.
Yeah, but as an individual.
Yeah. As an individual, you can do that as well.
And if I did that
I
and I
would
lost my
recommend
key,
against it as an interference.
yeah, well, I'm saying if I did that and I lost my key, then I'd have to convince Google that I am who I am and
Yes,
to let me
correct.
back in.
And there are back channels and ways in which you can do that as well.
I mean, I'm just trying to answer
it's a
Chris's
48-hour process. If you lose your capability, even if you've lost your password, and you don't have SMS, you don't have mobile phone, you don't have voice to text, whatever, it's a 48-hour process to go through that for most of those digital assets, be it Facebook, be it Google. You've got to go through process
So take a
to prove
second
who
key.
you are.
Take a second key with you.
Absolutely.
Don't lose
Just
it. Otherwise, you're
will to
offline
you.
before they 48 hours.
Which is why we default to get two keys.
Yeah.
Your press release says it's debuting in Australia. What about New Zealand?
Yes, the New Zealand market as well, and I manage New Zealand from here.
Right.
Um,
How do we
New Zealand is very similar, just in standard scale. Certainly, larger education in New Zealand is a big user, and University of Canterbury is our largest user in New Zealand. And then there's quite a lot of government departments in Wellington, for much the same reason, because of their Active Directory heritage.
Are you able to give us some sort of numbers, like how many staff have been issued?
Those numbers I don't have for New Zealand,
Okay.
so I can get them for you.
Yeah, and I'd be very interested in that, thanks.
So for individuals wanting to buy New Zealand, they
Yes.
just go to your website essentially?
So what does the key cost
Or
to
do you
buy?
have some sort of other outlet for the general market?
I'm sorry, I missed
So you have some other outlet in New Zealand for the general market, or do they just buy it from your website?
No, we do have partners in New Zealand as well that carry local stock.
And who are they?
Yeah. So our predominant is Sector, S-E-K-T-O-R, who recently acquired Duo New Zealand, the distributor Duo.
All right. Yeah.
So what does it cost to buy the key?
So the YubiKeys at retail are $45 US list for our 5 NFC. The 5 CI is $70 US list. Mostly because we have to license the Lightning port from Apple. Any other questions?
Just to clarify, what's your position with, say, password managers like LastPass, etc. So you're suggesting that because this is just a pure authenticator, you obviously got to keep track of passwords. So password managers still a good thing because you can never remember them all.
They are still a great thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you would have the YubiKey link. So you'd need it to authenticate your master password for LastPass, but you would still recommend having this on individual services that then you keep passwords within.
If you can eliminate a username password, I strongly recommend it. If there is facility or capability, so if you are a Microsoft Azure enterprise user, you can get involved in a passwordless experience today, and you can eliminate the need to log in with the username password. So all you need is the key.
Yeah. For an average consumer.
Correct. The average consumer doesn't engage in that. So yes, you still have the likes of a LastPass or other.
So you have LastPass and you'd authenticate LastPass to get your password
Yes.
onto, say, Google, and then you'd have Google needing you to authenticate.
Correct.
Use the key to authenticate to Google as well.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. So the YubiKey basically unlocks the secure store, or allows the unlocking of that secure store by authenticating you. Thank you. Yeah.
Yep.
And the whole security is around known devices. In other words, you talked about 1 month.
Depending on protocol, but yes, for the most part.
And can you vary that yourself? If
Yes,
you
you,
want
for the most part, yes, you can.
Okay.
Once again, depends on protocol. The fact that our key has 6 different protocols on there, the experience can sometimes be different. So if it's in a one-time password environment, it will require you to do that every time. and rarely can you reconfigure that alternately. Sometimes you can, but it's an unusual scenario. In the likes of a FIDO experience, then yeah, you can pretty much configure it any way you like, and everything in between.
Are you actively promoting the personalisation tool that is available for it?
Well, we make it available, and it's a free tool. For the most part, unless an enterprise is deploying a large amount of keys, you don't really need the personalisation tool. For the most part, it can be frustrating sometimes, and I use the personalisation tool. So, for instance, it presents a one-time password if I touch the key. So if I put my key in here and I touch my key, you'll notice there's the one-time password. There it is right there, right? And if I touch it again, there's another one-time password. The problem is, for some people, depending where the key physically resides on their laptop, they might accidentally tap it all the time. You can use the personalisation key to turn that personalisation tool to turn that off if you want to, because by default we ship with that capability. But yeah, you can turn it off. I can't think of another example why an individual would want the personalisation tool. Corporate, very different, because they might be rolling out X number of keys and they want to personalise them accordingly. They might want to turn protocols on and off on the key. Yeah. And it's very easy. So it's a matter of, because we script the whole thing, plug the key and pull it out, plug the key and pull it out. Any other questions? I like smiling faces. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
One question back in.
Dominic's got
You
one.
said the personalities of a smart card, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So, and you mentioned several times in the presentation, you emphasised the ability to go device to device. So, does it need any initial setup or an agent on a device, or is it purely backing off whatever your web service, as you described earlier, you configure the authentication in your web service? But
Depends on protocol. In the FIDO world, no, it's all clientless.
so just use the drivers in operating system.
Correct.
So
It
it
comes-
up as a smart card.
It comes in the kernel or comes in the browser. But in a one-time password world, well then you'll need different scenarios. So it depends on the protocol. But if it's the more modern protocols from PIV and above, no, it's all part and parcel of the operating system.
Yeah, let's say somebody wants to implement the Google Authenticator one-time password. Would the setup be needed for that? And also, I noticed you had an application of the machine used Authenticator application. What's it go with that?
Well, yes, you do. And that's once again based on the protocol. So if I was setting up a one-time password and I was going to use the authenticator, well, I need to scan the QR code and then do the time sync between the challenging environment and my authenticator. But that's based on that particular protocol. I don't need to go through that experience with FIDO. It's not the whole concept of it. FIDO is designed to make life easy. But yes, as the protocols get older, I do need some additional software or softwares or frustrating process.
Okay, look, so for the most uses of this product range, it's pretty much plug and play.
For the most part, yes. Yeah. So those digital assets I showed you before, so the Facebooks and the Googles and the Twitters and the so ons, you don't need to deploy anything. It's all built into the browser. And that's part of the whole FIDO experience, part of the whole FIDO protocol.